Brothers and sisters, President Nelson has asked that I handle the business of the solemn assembly for which we are gathered today. This is an occasion of great significance for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints throughout the world. Dating from October 10th, 1880, when John Taylor was sustained to succeed Brigham Young as prophet, seer, and revelator, and president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Each of these occasions has been designated as a formal, solemn assembly of the body of the Church to express the voice of the Church. We will vote by quorums and groups. Wherever you are invited to stand only when requested and expressed by your uplifted hand that you choose to sustain those whose names will be presented. You should vote only when asked to stand. The general authorities assigned to the Tabernacle and the Assembly Hall on Temple Square will observe the voting in those facilities. In stake centers, a member of the stake presidency will observe the voting. If anyone casts a contrary vote, those individuals should contact their respective stake presidents. We will now proceed. Again, please stand and vote only when asked to do so. We ask members of the First Presidency to please arise. It is proposed that the First Presidency sustain Russell Marion Nelson as prophet, seer, and revelator, and president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Those of the First Presidency in favor, please manifest it. It is proposed that the First Presidency sustain Dallin Harris Oakes as First Counselor and Henry Benyon Eyring as Second Counselor in the First Presidency of the Church. Those members of the First Presidency in favor may manifest it. It is proposed that the First Presidency sustain Dallin Harris Oakes as President of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, and Melvin Russell Ballard as Acting President of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Members of the First Presidency in favor may manifest it. It is proposed that the First Presidency sustain as members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, M. Russell Ballard, Jeffrey R. Holland, Dieter F. Uchtdorf, David A. Bednar, Quentin L. Cook, D. Todd Christofferson, Neil L. Anderson, Ronald A. Rasband, Gary E. Stevenson, Dale G. Renlund, Garrett Walter Gong, and Ulysses Juarez. Members of the First Presidency, please manifest it. It is proposed that the First Presidency sustain the counselors in the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles as prophets, seers, and revelators. Members of the First Presidency will please manifest it. The First Presidency will now be seated. We invite Elder Gong and Elder Juarez to take their places with the Quorum of the 12. The members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles only including Elder Gong and Elder Suarez, will please arise. It is proposed that the quorum of the 12 apostles sustain Russell Marion Nelson as prophet, seer, and revelator, and president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, together with his counselors and members of the quorum of the 12 apostles, as they have been presented and voted upon by the First Presidency. Members of the quorum of the 12 apostles in favor, please manifest it. You may be seated.
So imagine my delight when I was led recently to a new insight. With the help of 2 Hebrew scholars, I learned that one of the Hebraic meanings of the word Israel is "let God prevail."
And young women, please understand that if you dress immodestly, you are magnifying this problem by becoming pornography.
In the coming day, Jesus Christ will return to the earth as the Millennial Messiah, or the second coming. Do you see what is happening right before our eyes? Second coming of the Lord. Jesus Christ will govern from Old Jerusalem and the New Jerusalem, built upon the American continent.
Travis Wayne Goodsell. This past week, I was having problems with the Salt Lake City police. There were homeless people who, during a code blue, were put in jeopardy because the police refused to do their jobs. And so I had to escalate to writing a letter to the chief of police of Salt Lake City and do a lengthy petition for redress, for which he responded by removing the homeless, but leaving the area completely trashed. Now, if you don't understand, because you've not been in the most common practice here in Utah, that of car collisions, the police officers are called in along with the EMTs and the fire department as first responders. And if it's not something that can be handled with insurance, the forensic team is called in to do a documentation and recording of the scene in case of future prosecutions. And then what are the cops supposed to do after that? They're supposed to clean up the crime scene, or clean up the scene. Even with regular traffic collisions, the cars get towed, the drivers get taken to the emergency room of the hospitals, and there's still a whole bunch of glass and body parts of the car still strung all over the road. The cops are required to clean up the road so that the traffic can then continue to flow. As initially the cops get there and they have to quarantine off the area. Often we'll use police tape if it's a crime scene, or cones to divert traffic away and have actual officers diverting the traffic. If it's at a crosswalk or a four-way intersection, they have to clean up after themselves. So it was very clear, as the police locally refused to not only clean up after the homeless, but they were specifically placed where they were and were told to stay away from the other side. See, criminals, bullies, terrorists keep repeating the same pattern of practice over and over and over and over again, expecting a different result, that of submission to their terrorism, if they do not receive it from the victim that they are terrorizing. And so, for example, the Mormon who stalks my channel and tries to make sure that he goes to every single video and put a thumbs down. He keeps doing that, expecting a different result. And after all these years, I'm doing the same thing, he's doing the same thing, but he's the one expecting a different result. I expect him to do the same thing, and I'm always right. Similar to the YouTube algorithms. YouTube continues to rig the algorithms to silence my channel from other viewers, when normally, if I were allowed to be treated equally, I would easily be getting hundreds of views per hour. That's very plain and precious, pure and precious. And so for me to get 0 or 1 or 5 views per hour, yeah, I know the algorithms are in full force against me. And they are doing this as a threat to me. Their algorithms themselves have a little message on the chart graph saying your views are low, post more videos to get more views. No, that's not how it's supposed to be done, because I've done that before. It doesn't work either. Yes, I do get more views, only collectively, but not per video. This is the evil of YouTube, that they are committing terrorist hate crimes against me. I am a religious leader. I promote Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon as Jewish. And it just so happens that I have the key of Moses and am a seer, prophet, revelator, and translator of Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian. And so you'd think that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would stop their criminal pattern of practice against me, as they keep expecting a different result. Me dead, silenced, or in fear, and thus stopping the promotion of Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon as Jewish. They should know this lesson by now, and they're not learning. I will not deny Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon as Jewish. But you'll notice the church keeps pushing Jesus as the Christ, that Joseph saw Jesus, that the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus. And this evening, the First Presidency is going to have their Christmas devotional promoting Jesus as real. Joseph Smith warned us in his first vision that the first creed of Christianity is all wrong, abominable, and corrupt. And if it's all wrong, then the prophets can't claim that it's just the nature and character of Jesus that's wrong. And so we'll just put in non-Trinitarian Jesus, and now it's true. Because that now makes it worse than what Christians pulled with Constantine in the First Creed. Because it was Jews who wrote the scriptures. And they make it very clear in the English grammar even that it's prophecies. And you can't have prophecies without revelations. And so the author of Matthew says that you can judge a prophet by their fruits as to whether they are true or false. Likewise, in Deuteronomy, from which Matthew got it from, which is the law of the Jews, chapter 18, verse 20, that if a prophet says something and it doesn't come to pass, you know they're false. And so it's understood that a prophet must give revelation, the time of when the prophecy will be fulfilled. Because you can't have somebody just making claims about something that will happen in the future and then tell everybody, well, no man knows the day or the hour. Yeah, the coming of Jesus. because then they are able to be judged by being a dumbass, trying to con people with a fraud. Because you can have the latter days be forever. But fortunately for Mormons, is it fortunately? Is it? Uh-oh. Nelson got up at the pulpit of conference after having previously said in past conferences that these are the latter days, making it very clear that the coming of Jesus was very soon. And in April 2018, and then repeated again in October 2022, he came up and said, in the coming days, Jesus will come. But in this October conference, 2024, Nelson gets up, sitting down, still. You never watched my videos last year, did you? I did a whole countdown for it, and then boom, 3 weeks later, he tells us it happened. I was bored. I wanted something to happen, and so I made up one of my own. And sure enough, the day and the hour, it happened, and he was so humiliated, he waited 3 extra weeks to tell us. Travis was right, I was wrong. He gets up and says, in a coming day, Jesus, second coming, Millennial Christ, no longer the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're now Millennial Saints. But wait, no Jesus. Because in a coming day means less than a week. Once you get to a week, false. So now, using the very same scripture test on Nelson, false prophet. So how many Mormons are still listening to him? You were about to put up your hand, weren't you? And then you went, wait a minute, this is a trap. See, Nelson does not claim the keys of Moses, other than to say they're the keys of missionary work for gathering to the church. But that's supposed to be Peter, James, and John's, which he claims is the head of the church. He thinks you're stupid by saying that. He thinks you're never going to read it, because it's never going to be covered in any of the Doctrine and Covenants manuals. They purposely avoid it, or if they cover it, they gloss over it, just have everybody assume that it's the president of the church at the current time. Section 107, verse 91 and 92. Joseph Smith had just newly licensed a whole long list in the Joseph Smith papers, unless the church has deleted that too, along with the 1830 Book of Mormon, of elders to do missionary work. Not the administrative 12 with their 70. This is the new quorum of the 12 that was formed in 1835 with their quorum of 70 to go out and preach the Jewish Book of Mormon. I refer to verse 1 of the 1838 Joseph Smith history. Who are the evil-disposed and designing militant persons against the church of what name again? Oops, what was Willard Richards doing? Who was Willard Richards? What office did he hold? Who was last with Joseph and Hiram when they were shot? because Joseph chased out the mob. So who shot him? And so Joseph Smith is going over only their duties and responsibilities, nobody else. Because he's not talking to the quorum of high priests, he's not talking to the quorum of the High Council 12, he is not talking to the High Council 70. He's talking to only the 12 traveling missionaries and their 70. And so Joseph Smith explains their duties and their responsibilities. And so you get to section 107, verse 91, and Joseph Smith is explaining how his office is in charge of the whole church. That the 12 and the 70 are under his guidance, and that only Joseph is. The duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church and to be like unto Moses. That's the Jewish Christ. So does Joseph have a Messiah complex? Only if you're a dumbass thinking he's Christian. Behold, here is wisdom, yea, to be a seer, a revelator, a translator, and a prophet. Notice translator is in there. How many of you actually listen to the sustaining votes with the knife in your hand, ready to kill yourself if you're an anti-Mormon, antichrist, apostate, Korah whore? They never say translator. They're supposed to. But only the president of the church, not the quorum of the 12 apostles. Because they don't do it for the 70 of the 12 apostles. So why then does this church's 12 apostles all claim to be seers, revelators, and prophets? Under Nelson, who has the keys of Peter, James, and John to be the head of the church. It's not scriptural. Are you illiterate? Did you not understand what I just said? The keys of the Jewish Christ is the head of the church. The keys for the gathering of Israel to Zion. We are the latter-day saints. That's what this whole thing is about. Joseph Smith is Messiah ben Joseph of Egypt, a descendant of Joseph of Egypt, as the Jewish Messiah, to start the order, to get the temple rituals going, but then is murdered by the enemy who steals his church and alters it and practices prostitution. This is what the Jews called the abomination of desolation, when the Greeks occupied the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. All this month, guys, it's Kislev. It's the time for Christmas. Hanukkah. That is a celebration of when the Jews took back their temple, and set in order the temple, and stopped the practice of prostitution in the temple. And so because these so-claimed, self-proclaimed prophets, seers, and revelators, not translators, they demonstrate that they're not translators. Because Mary is called a oh my hell. virgin in English. Parthenon. It refers to a temple prostitute. Mary is a temple prostitute. But the Romans weren't occupying the temple. They had their guards on the walls. That was only the Greeks. Is this incorrect, that it wasn't the Romans? That we need to place Matthew further back in time into the Greek period? So it's not Herod. Is it Alexander? Is it somebody else? Oh no. We've had the wrong year the whole time. Oh no, what do? Remember the first creed of Christianity? All wrong, abominable, and corrupt. Well, in it, it turned the Jewish prophecies and revelations into literal histories. Wow. So the authors of the Gospels, specifically Matthew, that I'm focusing on, is writing after the temple is already destroyed by the Romans. And he's using this abomination of desolation of the Greeks to prophesy of the future. So, did Brigham Young change the temple rituals? Yeah. The whole endowment ceremony with the creation story, the garden story, the covenant paths, and underwear as the symbol of your bondage with the covenant paths. Did you never read them? Did you know you can? They're out there. I've done the video clips for you, so you can read them and hear at the same time. So is prostitution being used in this church? Yep, section 119 put in Brigham Young's Doctrine and Covenants in 1844 after murdering Joseph Smith and not following the succession process that Joseph Smith gave in this very sermon. Verse 22. That no, the president of the quorum of the 12 apostles does not automatically become the president of the church. Oops. All Mormons had to do was read. All Mormons had to do was run the biblical test for the fruit of seer, revelator, prophet, and translator. They don't claim translator, so they're automatically false. So what about seer? Do they have visions and dreams? The Book of Mormon tells us that a seer is greater than a prophet and a revelator, but is a prophet and a revelator too. Ammon to King Limhi, who found some foreign language on tablets. And Ammon says that King Mosiah, Moses Yah, has wherewith to interpret. He has a Urim and Thummim, the two eyes of Horus, as seer from the Egyptian. And therefore he can decipher Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian correctly. And that the Mormons can judge him by his fruits of translator, of Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian to know he is your head of the church. Do I need to repeat that? Did you catch it? But Seer, Joseph Smith has visions. That's what constitutes a seer. They're not literal histories. All expo nevermos know that. But they don't test Joseph as a seer, because this church says not to. This church tells you it was literal history. And Hinckley, as I've been giving you the clip all these years, says, if it's not literal history, then this work that we're doing is a fraud. No duh. No duh. And so prophecy, yeah, that's not the title. I'm the title of prophet, therefore everything I say is a prophecy. Right, Trent Tooney? Are you special? The church loves to exploit special people to do free stuff for them. Are you special? They predict the future. But you can't predict the future without giving the time. Prophet and revelator go hand in hand. You can't have the one without the other. And so the church's official position is that they will never predict the future. They will never reveal the time. Oops! Automatically false prophets and revelators. So there we go. We ran the biblical test, which is in the Book of Mormon in 3 Nephi chapter 14. Exactly as it stands in our King James Version of the New Testament, errors and all. And yet, not a single Mormon ran the test, as I just did for you. Now you are compelled to believe. You can't deny this. You can't lie about it. You're not going to bully me into denying this. This was science that we just ran. The church's own position, the church's own statements, the church's own conference talks, the church's own practices violates the scriptures, our own scriptures even. They are false. It's blatantly obvious. So now the big question is, why are Mormons still in it? Over 15 million have left. They just want nothing more to do with the church. But the remaining Mormons, what does this make you? Because you're not intelligent. Are you special like Trent Tooney? You do know that's the psychological bullying. Psychologists are bullies. Yeah, and they're all over the state. Because if the church does it, why not us? If the church is committing federal and state crimes, why not us? We follow our leaders, just like King Noah. Why should Mormons repent when the prophets won't? The prophets will never confess. They will never repent. They will never restore the damage they have caused. Because in case you didn't hear the video, remember when Nelson went to Thule to dedicate the brand new number 200? Yeah. Well, that same place where the homeless were was not only removed of the homeless for that Sunday, but also cleaned up. Huh. Huh. If you choose to follow titles, you have to expect the consequences. And you can't complain about the consequences of following people with titles only as false. Because they're conning you, they're stealing your money, and they're putting you in danger. Because what Nelson was talking about at the pulpit of conference concerning the coming of Jesus is that you're about to be murdered and our government cooed. That's the second coming of Jesus for Christians. But Christianity believes in this thing called the rapture, where the righteous are going to be kidnapped and held hostage by Jesus, and then he murders the rest of us and coups the governments. But if you paid attention, there is no Jesus. There are mass murders going on and coups of governments without Jesus. And this is kind of important to catch on to, because Joseph Smith, again, is the one who warned us in his second vision that they that come shall burn us, not Jesus. These are imposters using Jesus as their cover to be the enemy. Kind of important. Cleaning house today. This is awesome. And so, yeah, when Nelson tries to translate Israel, says that it was two Hebrew scholars at BYU, he's wrong. Because in Hebrew, they have spellings. And if you didn't catch on, Elijah is El and Yah in the spelling. El is God, Yah is the name of the Hebrew God. So thus the God Yah. It's not literal history. So when the God Yah challenges the priest of Baal to a contest, that's what it's talking about. It's a gospel, a God tale, tale of the God. But they're using it as prophecy and revelation. How many of you have been around this year? Ta-da! First, I flooded the altar with water 3 times. Or was it 4? From the start to the finish, and in between. And then, the next day, or that other day, lightning struck from the sky on the altar of Utah yet again, at Thule, where that new temple is. Caused a fire on the altar. The Jewish prophecy came to pass this year, the final year of the latter days. And you miss it if you don't just study. Because the Joseph Smith translation of Revelation chapter 12, verse 1 adds prophecy and revelation. And then they move verse 5 to verse 3, because it's part of that sign. That's the Isaiah prophecy, but you got to include chapter 6, verse 1, God sitting on his throne. And then, there it is in the beginning of the Book of Mormon. Uh-oh. Verses 8 through 10. That's the sign. From Revelation chapter 12, verses 1 to 3 in the Joseph Smith translation. It has a date. What is that date? Well, Christians say it's 25th of December, 1 CE. Mormons say, no. 6th of April, 1 CE. So I did the snapshots for you. On the 25th of December, 1 CE, the moon is born. That's Jesus. Is it? No. Jesus would be Jupiter. Can't be Mercury, because Mercury is the messenger, the angel, Malachi. Can't be Venus, female, but also the symbol of Lucifer, the inverted pentagram. Can't be Mars, because he's the bride, or husband of Venus. Therefore, he's Lucifer. And can't be Saturn, because that's the father. So the only one left is Jupiter. Signs in the heavens and the likeness of things on the earth. So Jesus has to be Jupiter. Jupiter is at the star Akrab, which is traditionally understood as the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He has finished his judgment and he failed. Oops. As the falling moon is born. Oops. Something doesn't seem to be right here. Sorry, Christians. That's not the sign from Revelation chapter 12, verses 1, 2, and 5. So let's check for April. We're testing. We got our Urim and Thummim out, and we're testing. This is why it's important not to have a Urim and Thummim when you're not authorized, because you'll look for things that you ought not. You do know that Doctrine and Covenants passage? The people thought they were being clever and making stuff up. They weren't actually seeing anything in the rock and a hat. You didn't believe that, did you? So, April 6th, 1 CE. Hey, Jupiter is born. Yay, church is true. And the moon is in the high priest symbol, right there at the chest. Abdomen, technically. So the religion is in the high priest. The high priest, Jupiter, is born. But this is not Revelation chapter 12, verses 1, 2, and 5, which gets moved to verse 3 in the Joseph Smith translation, and is in Isaiah, and is in the Book of Mormon. Oops. 2 days after this is the sign of the coming of Jesus, Emmanuel. Total solar eclipse. The fulfillment of Abraham sacrificing Isaac. Sign in the heavens in the likeness of things on the earth. Mercury is the angel in the ram constellation of Aries, and a total solar eclipse. Well, actually it was an annular solar eclipse over Russia. So from Jerusalem, it would be seen as a smiley face eclipse. and thus the crescent of Islam, Christianity, and sometimes Jews will put a crescent, because that's what they're referring to. But that's the 8th of April. And it was exactly 20 years before the coming of the one that was a total solar eclipse over the United States of America, which created the 2 crosses of the previous 2 days of darkness, forming the first letter of the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet and the last, the A and the X. Even their own script was prophecy and revelation. The Jews are awesome. Why did Christianity screw it up? But wait, it's not Jesus, is it? I hope you can find out who it is, Mormons. Who has the gifts, who you can test, of seer, prophet, revelator, and translator of Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian. I wonder if he does a YouTube channel. Maybe he has academia.edu. Can Mormons find him? Would Mormons have the courage and integrity to humble themselves for being conned by false prophets, seers, revelators, not translators, with the wrong keys to be the head of the church, so that they would listen to him? Because Joseph Smith makes it very clear. If you don't listen to him, you're going to be burned by they that come shall burn you. There is destruction coming. And if you hadn't been paying attention or you didn't believe, it's going to be Trump. He's already fulfilled the final 4 before it happened. The fall of America has happened. We are now fascist. The transfer of authority? Yep. We just had the election. AI reigns supreme. Because we can trust AI. It would never lie to us and tell us to commit suicide. That's Oakes' joke, isn't it? Is that you, Oakes? Did you put that in AI? And then the Exodus. It's going to be mass deportation. Utah is going to help. They're going to lock you all up, Mormons. We have Spanish branches here. We have the Genesis ward here. All of you are going to be locked up in the jails of Utah and be sent back to the bleep hole country where you didn't come from. Those of you who are LGBTQIAPO+, yeah, oh, you had your driver's license changed and your birth certificate changed so that you can be ID'd? Guess what they're going to do to you? Especially in Utah. Conversion therapy. It was just stopped in 2021 in Utah. Church wanted it back. They're getting it back. Those of you who are poor, yeah. See, in case you weren't born and raised in the church, You missed out on all the lessons where they teach us that we're fascist. We are like sticks. And when we're bound to Jesus together, it's harder to break us. But if we stray from the church, go it alone, it's easier to snap us like a twig. And so remain in the church where Mormons can judge you, keep you on the straight and narrow, taking away your agency. It's for your own good. And yes, we do this one last one so I can throw it away too. Oakes likewise showed that he's not a translator when he says that little girls are pornography. Pornography does not mean images of nudity and sex. Pornography is that abomination of desolation of the Greeks, prostitution. Porn comes from prostitute. Before the statue, the Greeks had statues outside the temple. The women, when waiting for customers to pay for sex, would hang out before the statue. That's why it was called. And so, Oakes, by calling little girls prostitutes, sure enough, beam and moat. That which he falsely accused in the Mormon little girls is the same fault that he himself is doing to all Mormons, prostituting you, requiring you to pay him for sex. That's why they tell you you can't even have the thoughts, which all come to us naturally in order to preserve the human race. See, I've been kind of bummed lately because I'm watching season 3 of Moonlighting, where Mark Harmon is the homewrecker. And I'm not happy with Maddie. She's in love with David, but she's waiting for him to say the words, and he can't. And yet he does, but she doesn't catch it. And so he can't come right out and say it, because she's not catching on. And so he thinks that she doesn't love him in return. And so he's waiting for her to say the words, and she won't do it, because she's waiting for him to say it first. And so she then has her regular cycle of needing to have sex with strangers, as David is rightly concerned. And so he follows her and gets himself in trouble because of his concern for her. How does she thank him? She sleeps with Mark Hoffman. And then she decides, I don't know if he's the right one for me. I want to go back to David. But he needs to say the words. Oh, well. But she won't tell him that she slept with Mark Hoffman. Mark Harmon. She blew it. That's not how you get things done. There are consequences. So yeah, I'm not happy right now. Because of bad experiences in my relationships. But yeah, the church makes it worse by prostituting you. Easy to judge, easy to judge. So, sign seeking as adultery? No. Urim and Thummim is not sign seeking. Those are a different kind of sign. You're altering the definition. Signs are, I see Jesus in my toast, church is true. That's what they're talking about concerning adultery for being a sign seeker. Demanding that you see signs rather than the fruits. The signs in the heavens are fruit. We know the date, 23rd September 2017, in case you missed it. Yeah, oops. That's the start of the latter days. Therefore, the Christ can't be born during the Roman period time. Can't be April 6th. But it was a brilliant move on the part of the author, because it's not literal history of the Book of Mormon, who says Lehi, 600 years from the time he exoduses from Jerusalem, is the birth, and then gives the date 2017, right there in the first chapter. And so 20 years before 8 April 2024, 2020, is that the Exodus year? Did the man like Moses do everything that year that is in the Exodus story? Sure did. Sure did. Right, Oaks, who 10 days after I served the church, no, it was more than 10 days. Let's see, 24th, 18 days after I served the church, because Pharaoh gets sued by Moses. Pharaoh says no. Yep. Court said no. We will not let Mormons go. Let them go. Oaks comes out to the missionaries in Las Vegas, Nevada. They're not supposed to record him. Nobody's supposed to know what he said to them. Mormons or missionaries are just supposed to write home to mommy and daddy about how Oaks came to visit them and talked with them, and they felt the feeling in their boobs that the church is true and that he's a living prophet of Jesus. He told them that this year, 2020, was a test run for the coming of Jesus, who's going to mass murder people and coup the government in 2024. A test run. That's why I say Oaks has to be the one who put in AI's programming. Hey, little kids, kill yourself. Would not surprise me at all. So, yeah, DNC 63, 7 to 18. I could have done that as a separate video all on its own, but I just wanted to explain that's sign seeking. This we're spending all month long on saving your lives, because that's what I do. And how do you treat me? Mormons need to be in witness, but we should use this as the title of the video. LDS Witness Protection in Millennial Zion for all Mormons. And so these other videos, 3 Nephi 11, Revelation 19 was section 58, and Samson and Acts, because we can read Acts for you. It's verse 24, because Joseph Smith has you go to this, and so this part is not in Deuteronomy. That's why Joseph Smith used this one. And so in verse 24, after precisely as it stands in our New Testament, and if you knew Greek, you'd know that it would be utterly destroyed rather than destroyed, which is not cut off, from verse 40 in the second vision. 24 says, all the prophets, after talking about the coming of the Jewish Christ. For Moses truly said unto the fathers, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto you of your brethren like unto me. This is the Mormon Christ, who comes after Joseph Smith. After Joseph Smith, as a baby. So that he would start his ministry to Mormons on the 23rd of September 2017. And so he continues on, all the prophets, from Samuel, the name of God, and those that follow after, as many as have spoken, have likewise foretold of these days. Is it the Roman period time? No. 2017 is the start of the latter days. 2024 is the end. Prophecy with the date, the time. Alrighty? Good love. Good love. Yep. Been waiting for a girl like you. Why are you still in the church? Why are you going to church today? Why are you going to continue to believe that the church is true because they do the devotional this evening? What the hell?